I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program today. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. For those of you who are watching the program right now online, facebook.com/Conduit News, or perhaps you're also watching over at the YouTube channel or at conduitnews.com. For those of you watching, you can tell that we're not really in our normal setup here. That's because my producer, board operator, call screener, we do a lot of things around here. We get this Millennium Falcon type studio up and running every day. Joe decided that he needed the day off. And he told me this like 3 weeks ago. Do you know why Joe is taking the day off today? He's taking the day off because this weekend is Avengers. And he had big plans. And I don't know, he's going somewhere. A destination movie trip where they want to see, the conclusion of this Avengers Infinity War. What is it? Avengers Endgame, this whole saga. Now, I myself, just so you know, I myself, I definitely follow the superhero franchise, Marvel. We've had many debates over it. So I'm excited as well. The only reason I bring this up today is because I wanted you to know something. If you're one of these people that follow it and you are really excited about this upcoming, they say it's going to be the conclusion of the series or of at least, the 4 phases that Marvel has so geniusly rolled out since 2008. You might want to stay off social media for a little while. Just some word of advice. Personally, that's what I'm doing. I think there's already stuff that's kind of out there. So if you don't want somebody to ruin it, to spoil it for you, whatever happens, you probably don't want to, just be careful what you're looking at, which is that's actually really good advice anytime you're on the internet. But just be careful. Don't just casually stroll through social media if you're a big Avengers or big Marvel comic book, Captain America, Iron Man fan, because you may be disappointed because there are trolls out there, and you're going to see some meme that's like, I don't know. I will say this: I think out of all of the movies, because this is the last one, because the stakes are so high, the last one in this phase or whatever. Most people are just trying to, I don't know, they've got pools going to see which one of their favorite superheroes is going to perish, let's say, in the upcoming movie. Anyway, they're set to break box office records. It's going to be pretty interesting to see. And see, I don't even know if I'm going to be able to get to see it this weekend because I got stuff to do, man. I never understood this. I'll get to the news here in just a minute. And by the way, it is Johnny Cash Friday. I never understood this because it's really frustrating. But I got stuff to do. I'm a father. I'm a husband. Never understood when my older siblings, I was younger than them, and I would, have you seen this movie? And, I can't believe it. What are you doing with your life? Well, they were actually being much more productive than I was, and I was just wasting all of my life in cinema after cinema. Anyway. The telephone number this morning, 870-275-9799, if you want to contribute to the conversation. We're going to start, actually, right here. I'm going to start with this article having to do, it's a Breitbart piece, and here it is. this is fascinating to me because what we have here is the federal government stepping up here and indicting a judge that, according to the indictment, according to what I know about this, actually went out of her way to make sure an illegal immigrant walked free out of the state's custody. And this had a lot of people wondering, what really is, what's going on here. So it's District Court Judge Shelley Richmond Joseph, and they also indicted the trial court officer Wesley McGregor. And McGregor here, I think he's the one that basically let this illegal immigrant out using his, key pass card out the back door, out the basement door or whatever. So the illegal alien was arrested in March 2018 for narcotics possession. Now think about this for a second. Why in the world would is it Massachusetts? Why in the world would a Massachusetts judge want to go easy and not turn over a guy, an illegal immigrant, when the ICE officer is there in the courtroom? This judge tells the ICE officer to wait outside. Then they turn off the recording device, which apparently is against state law because they were supposed to be recording. They, the attorney and the judge, they talked, and they basically took this guy and ushered him downstairs away from the ICE officer. Again, he's there on a narcotics charge, away from the ICE officer, and then let him out the back door. Now, the potential public corruption just in and of itself, and forget about not following the law for a second. How do we know these people weren't paid off? How do we know that the judge and, I'm just saying, why else would you do that? We're talking about narcotics. That's a lot of money. That could have been just some low-level thing. But still, ICE was there. The Immigration's Custom and Enforcement, they were there. And there wasn't anything that the state did to cooperate with federal authorities here. And that's why they're indicting these two people. The officer announced his presence to the courthouse, including Joseph, the judge, upon arrival. Prior to the afternoon session, the courtroom clerk, at Joseph's direction, allegedly instructed the ICE officer to leave the courtroom, wait outside in the lobby, stating that in the event that the defendant was released, it would be through the courtroom and into the lobby. So the judge then lies to the ICE officer, saying, hey, if we release this guy, he's walking right out of those doors, right into your authority. At 2:48 p.m., the case was called and the proceedings were captured on the audio recorder, the courtroom's audio recorder, and that, again, is apparently part of the rules of the state court districts. The audio recording captured Joseph, the defense attorney, and the ADA speaking at a sidebar about the defendant and the ICE detainer. Joseph then allegedly ordered the courtroom clerk to go off the record for a moment, and for the next 52 seconds, the courtroom audio recorder was turned off in violation of district court rules, not the law, the rules. At 2:51 p.m., the recorder was turned back on, and Joseph indicated her intent to release the defendant. According to the charging documents, the defense attorney asked to speak with the defendant downstairs, and Joseph responded, "That's fine, of course." "That's fine, of course," wink, wink. When reminded by the clerk that an ICE officer was in the courthouse, Joseph stated, "That's fine, I'm not going to allow them to come in here, but he's been released on this." Immediately following the proceeding, McGregor allegedly escorted the defendant, his attorney, and the interpreter downstairs to the lockup and used his security access card to open the rear Sally Port exit and release the defendant at 3:01 p.m. Now, if you're the ICE officer here, and listen, I know there's going to be some of you out there that are like, well, states' rights, Paul, states' rights. Okay. If you're the ICE officer and you've been told, by the judge, hey, just wait outside, you're probably already thinking something a little weird's going on, but okay, that's fine. Wait outside. But hey, when we release this guy, he's going right through those doors. And then, can you imagine the phone call this ICE officer made to his superiors after this happened? After he realized what had happened? After he realized that the judge went behind his back? I mean, probably, did he peek in the courtroom at some point and was like, hey, wait a second, court's over. Where is this guy? Did he just vanish? Well, then you're going to ask, okay, well, so he's in lockup still. You still held on to him? No, we we purposely we purposely released him so he wouldn't be able to, so you wouldn't be able to arrest him or talk to him or whatever they wanted to do. Anyway, it's pretty crazy when you think about it. So this is good. I mean, I think we could all agree this is a good thing. Federal government's doing this. Of course, the media, what are they saying? I mean, they're saying that this is in response to political or this is political gamesmanship is what this really is. Really, I mean, come on, read those events and you tell me that you support that, right? Read that. I mean, if you replace immigration, customs, and enforcement with like the FBI, let's say it was the FBI. Could you imagine if it was the FBI that wanted to talk to somebody and the FBI was asked to leave the courtroom and the FBI was lied to? Come on. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Okay, so here's another huge story from SarahCarter.com. This one is wild, folks. This stuff is getting real. I'm telling you, this is going to. This is going to be so much bigger than the average person knows. There are going to be people in the media that are going to continue to have. Honestly, you know what I think? This is a real possibility. The media is so delusional that, well, first of all, they have been actively deceiving, but there's also some subconscious bias that they just can't. I mean, it's real and it's substantial, but that they have a hard time. When there are indictments of former Obama administration officials for what they did to the president, for what they did to George Papadopoulos and Carter Page, when there are actual indictments of these guys, there may be some of these. We may be getting some new anchors on some of these liberal networks, not because they are actually experiencing, a minuscule amount of self-reflection that they've been lying to their audience, but there may be some of these people that have mental breakdowns. I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. We've already seen the reports that because of the election of Donald Trump, therapy and therapists are making a killing right now in the Washington, D.C. area specifically, but really all across the country, because people are having to seek therapy, right? I have showed you articles from leftist articles. Was it Mother Jones, where you had these you have women now who are not wanting to be intimate with their husbands because Donald Trump is president, because they feel their whole world, and that's because they're finding their identity in government, which is not a good idea. But there are people saying this, that they don't even want to be intimate with their husbands who've done nothing wrong, because Donald Trump is too masculine and they feel bad about it. It's just crazy. When the media continues to lay these nets for the president falsely and wrongly, when these other people, these deep state actors, continue to lay these nets, and then they fall into their own nets over and over and over, the media is continuing to pick itself back up and act like they're still legitimate arbiters of facts, neutral arbiters of facts, and they're not. And eventually, all of this stuff's going to happen. Now, here's the headline. FBI text messages show agents discussed recruiting White House sources to spy for the Bureau. Now, that is a huge. This is from SarahCarter.com. SarahACarter.com. Now, you've seen her on Hannity, and she does a fantastic job. She's been reporting on this. Really, her and John Solomon are some of the best reporters in the country right now, because they're just, they're getting down to the nitty-gritty of what actually happened. So the reason this is a big deal is these text messages, that they've got the text messages where they're basically saying, hey, listen, isn't Vice President Mike Pence's chief of staff, isn't he the husband of this girl that worked for the FBI on the Hillary Clinton investigation? Essentially, the allegation is that they were speculating on whether or not they could compromise or make a source out of Mike Pence's chief of staff based on the marital relationship. Senior Republican chairman submitted a letter Thursday to the Department of Justice revealing new text messages from former FBI Special Agent Peter Strzok to his lover, FBI agent Lisa Page, showing the pair had discussed attempts to recruit sources within the White House to allegedly spy on the Trump administration. So now we have another allegation of spying. I don't know if anybody saw the Ingram angle last 2 nights ago, but on Laura Ingram's show, former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee was guest hosting, and he did a fantastic job. And Mike Huckabee was talking to a guy by the name of Joe DeGeneva. I don't know if any of you saw this, but you need to go and look it up. Joe DeGeneva, ladies and gentlemen, was one of the original FISA court attorneys when FISA was starting up. And of course, the FISA court is kind of a secret, covert committee where you can go and you submit. We really have a lot of faith in these guys because they are. These judges are supposed to make decisions on whether or not it's justified for the government to essentially spy on Americans, if you have the right evidence and that sort of thing. Joe DeGeneva said that the FISA court, the head of the FISA court, has already told the Justice Department that the FBI spied on that the FBI spied on Americans 4 years before the 2016 elections. Now, I want to know, well, which Americans? Well, obviously, there's some sort of political figure. That's a given, number one. Number two, they hired 4, according to this Joe DeGeneva guy, the FBI hired 4 contractors to perform the surveillance. So when Bill Barr took all of that heat in the committee 3 weeks ago, when he said there was spying on the Trump campaign, well, do you understand that that's the spying on the Trump campaign? And I have sources that are telling me that this is only the begin. Like, this is just the tip of the iceberg. That this is going to be bigger and wider than most people know. But the stuff that Hannity is doing, the stuff that John Solomon and Sarah Carter are doing, folks, this is there's going to have to be, at some point, these other outlets that have been lying to their people because they just hate Donald Trump personally, they're going to be shocked. Now, they're going to have a choice, these media outlets. Are they going to tell the truth when all this happens, or are they going to claim that we're now in a banana republic where Donald Trump is going after his political adversaries? I believe they're going to do the latter, because I've already seen a Politico article 2 days ago. The Politico saying Trump better be careful about revenge. That's going to be the talking point. Trump's getting revenge. Not that there was any actually laws broken. They're going to ignore that. They're going to say, is Trump getting revenge? Or are we a banana republic? They even claimed that if Trump goes after those who attempted to investigate him, or did investigate him, he's one of the most vetted presidents ever, folks. They're saying that would be obstruction of justice. What? That would be obstruction of justice? Okay, we can't just continually change the definition of what obstruction of justice is, okay? We got to stick with what the definition is. The telephone number, 870-275-9799, and that means, I guess, I'm out of time. It is Johnny Cash Friday, though. We appreciate you guys listening to the program, and we'll be back here in just a moment.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back to the show. Thanks so much for being with us. Good morning, everybody. We really appreciate you listening.
And we do this thing called the Impression of the Session every 2 years, where we try to talk to as many legislators as we can about what they thought of the session, the 92nd General Assembly in this case. Welcome back to the program. We've got State Representative Stephen Meeks. He's from District 67. Stephen, how are you, sir?
Doing well, and you, sir?
I am doing fantastic this morning. I am. So, State Representative Stephen Meeks, we're going to start generally. Representative Stephen Meeks, what was your impression of the session 2019?
Well, I think of the sessions that I've been through, this is just logistically has been one of the smoothest and least controversial sessions that I have been through. I will say that I think a lot of that is due not only to the leadership of the speaker, but also to the fact, and I know this might be somewhat controversial to some listeners, because of the extended term limits. It used to be under the old system that we were turning over the House every 2 years, and so you were getting rid of a lot of knowledge. And because we've had the extended term limits now, lawmakers have a chance to become more knowledgeable on these issues, and so we can be a lot more efficient with our time. This session, we only met once on Friday, and that's never happened in any of the sessions that I've been to. We might have gone like January, and then we were meeting Monday through Friday, 5 days a week. In this session, except for that one time, it was just Monday through Thursday. And what that allowed was, as that gave us 3 days back in our districts to visit with folks back home, it gave us more time to study bills and to read about upcoming events. And it also saved taxpayers money, because we weren't at the Capitol on those days. So we had a much more efficient session that saved money. I'll also say that with the transformation bill, that was that about 2,500 long page bill. Had it not been for that bill, we actually probably would have finished session a week sooner than we did. And so it would have been one of the shortest sessions that we'd had. So overall, I'd say it was a good session. I think we got a lot of good things accomplished for our Kansans. Obviously, there were some things that I didn't agree with that got done, and that's all part of it.
Yeah, definitely. We're talking with State Representative Stephen Meeks. On a policy front, let's specifically talk tax policy. You voted against HJR 1018 to continue a levy of the 1/2 cent sales tax that's set to expire. You also voted against SB.
You got Congressman Rick Crawford. He held a press conference yesterday about human trafficking. Anybody hear about this? It was great. I mean, we think that human trafficking is something that's only going on. This is what he was saying. I'm paraphrasing, but we think that human trafficking is something that's only going on in these big cities. But it's not the case. We got human trafficking going on all over the country, right here in Arkansas. And he did an excellent job articulating that message, and it was really, really good stuff. Let me see here, 1 second, folks. Anyway, so on the show today, we have Scott Richardson coming up here at 7:05. Interesting. I wonder what he wants to talk about. And then we also have, believe it or not, Congressman Bruce Westerman will be on the program at 7:33 this morning. So we got a jam-packed 7 o'clock hour. We'll be talking about all kinds of stuff. Also, I want to hear kind of what President Trump said yesterday, as well as we got Arkansas news. More people, more people being charged with crimes related to Medicaid fraud. I'll tell you about that, too. All right, folks, welcome back. It is Johnny Cash Friday. Thanks for bearing with me. One man operation this morning. All right, so the telephone number, if you want to text me, 870-275-9799. As I told you right before we left, we've got Mr. Scott Richardson. A lot of people say, well, who's Scott Richardson? Well, you don't remember. He was the guy that challenged Dan Douglas and lost by only a handful of votes. Remember State Representative Dan Douglas? Of course you do. So Dan Douglas, who, for a Republican, likes some tax increases. He does. And apparently this last session, Republican Dan Douglas, he voted against the pro-life bill. Then he sponsored an assisted suicide bill. I mean, it's just odd things. Anyway, so Scott Richardson's going to be on the program. Be interesting to see what he has to say about all this. Or maybe he's got, who knows? Who knows? We'll see what happens. What else do we have? Oh, yeah, this is fascinating to me. So the President of the United States yesterday decided to call in and do like a, hour interview with the President of the United States. And so this is always fun when this happens because, the President of the United States, he's really and truly, he's extremely transparent, and he, in terms of giving access to the press. The President Obama just really didn't give very much access to the press. It's just, just to be honest with you. So here is, let's go ahead and get some of this audio right here, if I get this queued up. And let's let you listen to it. This is the President of the United States last night on Sean
attempts
Hannity.
to recruit sources from within your White House to spy on your administration and reveal that they had one particular contact within the White House, the Vice President's Chief of Staff, whose wife was working as an analyst for Strzok on the FBI investigation into Hillary's private server. Have you heard this report tonight, sir?
I just heard it a little while ago, and frankly, it's very disconcerting. If you look at what's been happening, they were the same two, the two lovers that decided to use the FBI server instead of their private, so they didn't get caught. These two were beauties. There's no doubt about it. They were going hog wild to find something about the administration, which obviously wasn't there. We have nothing to do with Russia, except that we've been tougher on Russia than any administration in 50 years. A lot tougher than Obama. But these were the two that talked about the insurance policy, just in case Hillary Clinton loses. If she loses, we've got an insurance policy.
That's
well, that was the
right
insurance
there.
policy. Now she lost, and now they're trying to infiltrate the administration to really, it's a coup. It's spying. It's everything that you can imagine. It's hard to believe in this country that we would have had that. I don't know if you remember a long time ago, very early on, I used the word wiretap, and I put it in quotes, meaning surveillance, spying. You can sort of say whatever you want, but that was a long time ago. And
exactly what I said
I've never
yesterday,
seen anything like a blow-up like you've never seen. Now I understand why, because they thought 2 years ago when I said that, just on a little bit of a hunch and a little bit of wisdom, maybe, it blew up because they thought maybe I was wise to them or they were caught. And that's why, because if they weren't doing anything wrong, it would have just gone by. Nobody would have cared about it. It was pretty insignificant, I thought, when I said it. And it's pretty amazing. So you see now they're trying to infiltrate the White House. This is long after the election. It's a disgrace. And, again, hopefully the Attorney General will do what's right, and I really believe he will.
That's President Donald Trump. He said something that I said yesterday. When Donald Trump said he was wiretapped, okay, and I've said this many times, he was right in the general context that somebody was messing with him in his campaign, right? And they were using intelligence apparatuses to do it, okay? So Donald Trump is I think, when it comes to communicating basic concepts, I think he will opt for the one he thinks most people are going to understand. Most people know what a wiretap is. It's actually a very old piece of technology, but most people know what a wiretap is. The average American is not going to know what X key score is, which was an NSA program that Edward Snowden revealed. You know what I mean? They're not going to know that because they haven't read about it. They haven't searched it, and the media doesn't really report on stuff like that, right? So he was right. He was right. And when he makes these statements that everyone says, can you believe the president says he was wiretapped? Oh, by the way, now we have an attorney general that says he was spied on. And now we have text messages that indicate that not only were Peter Strzok and Lisa Page talking about an insurance policy in case Hillary lost, we now have them also trying to forge relationships with the inner circle chiefs of staff in the White House to try to see if they will report back to the FBI. Now, there are still some people out there in this world who do not believe in the concept of a deep state. They don't believe it. Let me just tell you this. Everybody's going to know and everybody's going to believe in a deep state when this is all said and done. I think that's what's going to be laid bare here. And then America's going to have some, we're going to have some questions. We're going to have to figure out what we do, going forward. The president also said this on Sean Hannity last night.
Bulk of information in the application was the Clinton bought and paid for Russian, of all things, dossier, ignored by the Mueller report, which I'll ask you about in a second here. But those are two specific incidents of attempts
Hannity.
To get into your campaign.
What's
your
reaction
to all that?
To get into your campaign?
Well, I think they made many attempts, and then you see the lying, and you see the leaking, and you see Comey lie to Congress, nothing happens. You see him leaking, nothing happens. And this is leaking classified information. This is leaking really big stuff. I remember the young sailor. In fact, I helped him out with his family because I thought he was so untreated, as you know. But I remember he had confidential information, which is a much lower standard than classified. And they put him in jail for a long time. They took away his life. And then you look at what Hillary Clinton did with 33,000 emails and hundreds of thousands of text messages or emails going through the Wiener server or computer, hundreds of thousands of which many were classified, and nothing happens to her, and yet they put a young sailor on for doing something innocent, showing his mother and his friend what the desk looked like, the desk in a 40-year-old submarine. I think Russia and China would have had that picture many years ago. So it's really a double standard like you've never seen. Very, very unfair, but hopefully that will change. I think that will be changing.
Mr. President, closed-door
James Comey has got problems. I think we definitely know in the future he's got problems, and that's why. But yet he's so smug. And I think Hillary Clinton has got to be one of the least self-aware people in the entire world. I think she's got to be one of the least. I mean, Hillary Clinton, she the other day came out and said that if it were anybody else, they would have been, indicted for obstruction of justice. But it was Trump. I mean, are you the least self-aware person in the world? What's wrong with you? How can you possibly say that, Hillary? I mean, your legal troubles alone, your legal troubles make up, really a tenth of a reason that you lost. I mean, you're the worst political candidate in American history, period. Worst candidate ever. And your legal troubles are really only a tenth of that because there's so much other stuff. Well, your specific email situation is only like a tenth of that. That's just how tainted, that's how absolutely corrupt this woman is, and she's the least self-aware person in the world to make those comments. Also, by the way, this is the Twitter handle at AKA Real Dirty. I think it's a combat veteran, from at least from what his profile says. He put all these clips up on Twitter. President Trump says, "I don't regret saying let's put this all behind us and let's move on. After that great evening, they started coming after us with their insurance policy, so we started looking at them." This is in response to Hillary Clinton specifically. When Hillary, came to the inauguration, remember? And she dressed all in white. It was like a way to, I don't know, maybe it was a way to surrender, And I think Trump was like, okay, all right, put all this behind us. But then, just listen to this exchange.
Leech bit, hammers, SIM cards.
No, I don't regret saying it. When I won, they were all saying, lock her up, lock her up. And I said, no, let's get on with life. That was different. It was like right after the election, you want to get a new page and turn over a new leaf. And I said, let's get on with it. Let's, build up the economy, which, by the way, is doing record business. I'm so proud of the economy. We're doing numbers that nobody's ever believed. Probably the best economy we've ever had, best unemployment numbers we've ever had. It's been incredible. But I said, let's get on with our life. Let's forget about the past. But now what happened is fairly shortly after that great evening, they started coming at us with the insurance policy, and everything they did was so dishonest. And then we really started looking into a lot of things like her deleted emails and acid-washed emails, which is unheard of because of the expense of doing it, and how she got away with it, how her lawyer got away with it, how all of these things happened. Don't forget, when they interviewed her, that was on July 4th weekend. It was very, very late into the July 4th weekend. They asked her questions. They didn't have a stenographer. They didn't have anybody swear her in. They didn't have a tape recorder. They just walked in, asked her some questions, and that was fine. And
I haven't heard anybody say what would have happened with all of this phony Russian setup. They were basically framing Donald Trump and his campaign. I haven't heard anybody speculate what they would have done with that information had Hillary actually won the election. Something to think about. Because I think they would have taught Donald Trump a lesson. I think they would have gone after him regardless, because they would teach anybody that would want to try to operate a political campaign outside of the status quo of both parties. Really, they would make an example out of him and his whole family, which is what they wanted to do as well. Anyway, it's pretty wild stuff, folks. I mean, here's the president last night, his response to the Mueller report.
You got up to 18, 19, 20. They were all Democrats. Many of them made major contributions to the Hillary Clinton campaign, and they had one of them was one of the top people at the Clinton Foundation, Jeannie Ray. Then you had Weissman. You had some bad people. No friends of Trump. I had no friends. It was like a one-sided witch hunt, as I called it. And, Bob Mueller, I turned him down to run the FBI. The next day he was appointed to be the head of this special counsel, as they call it. It's really a much tougher word than that, but I won't use it. And a terrible thing. He was conflicted for that reason. He also was conflicted because of the fact that Comey and him are best friends. So if not best, very close to best, but I would say best friends. You look at pictures of the two of them in the past. We had a nasty business transaction, the two of us. I had a nasty transaction with him, and then all of a sudden he's my prosecutor. Very, very unfair. And with all of that and $35 million spent, think of that, over 2 years, ruining lives of people, ruining their lives, people going out of business because they couldn't afford lawyers. It's just unbelievable what happened, how bad it was. I can't even tell you how bad it was. Nobody knows how people suffered. Great people that came to Washington, they came to D.C. to set the world in a very positive way on fire. They wanted to clean things up and do a great job, and all of a sudden they're testifying on nonsense. And it's really a shame. And, with all of the things you've heard, nothing had to do with the campaign, nothing had to do with Russia, collusion. But the bottom line is with a group of very serious Trump haters, a group of, I call them angry Democrats, somebody who was very conflicted at the top, no collusion. And also no.
Yeah, and that's and again, you hear the president lay out that case there, and then they still came back, and they found no collusion. That's fascinating. I mean, that's something that we don't really talk about enough. I was fully expecting some, no pun intended, trumped up indictment, because Donald Trump is such a threat to the way business is done in Washington. Sean Hannity asked the president, will you declassify the 5 buckets of information?
Last question. Will you declassify the FISA applications, Gang of 8 material, those 302s, or, what we call in this program the bucket of 5?
Yes, everything is going to be declassified, and more, much more than what you just mentioned. It'll all be declassified, and I'm glad I waited, because I thought that maybe they would obstruct if I did it early, and I think I was right. So I'm glad I waited, and now the Attorney General can take a very strong look at whatever it is, but it will be declassified, and more than what you just mentioned.
So there was even a situation on the Ingram angle 2 nights ago where they said this guy Joe DeGeneva said that there's a report coming out in 2 to 3 weeks that is only about James Comey. I don't know if it's some Inspector General report or what, but it's supposedly it's all about James Comey. So that will be very interesting. They also said that John Brennan, the former director of the CIA, doesn't need 1 lawyer. He's going to need like 5 lawyers. So my question is, and this is only, you'll have to forgive me, this is probably not what is on the forefront of your mind when you hear all of this. But I just wonder, is there a breaking point where, what does the media do? What does the mainstream media do if that happens? If CNN contributor John Brennan, the former head of the CIA, has to lawyer up because he's caught? What? It probably nothing happens to the media. You have no shame. And the media sets these rotating moral standards based on the story, right? They can't stand religion. They can't stand God in public life, and yet Notre Dame's on fire, and oh my goodness, can you believe it? You had all these other, I'm sure these Democrats, we're so upset, and then, Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama and Elizabeth Warren, they can't bring themselves to say that Christians were murdered on Easter in Sri Lanka, but they can say Easter worshipers. By the way, Babylon Bee had a hilarious meme about what you're really supposed to call Christians. Or what you're really supposed to call, for example, Mormons. You can't call Mormons Mormons. You call Mormons enthusiastic bike riders. Yeah. You can't call, and then Jehovah's Witnesses are like the Mormons, but minus the bikes. It's pretty funny. I'll see if I can't find it for you. But hey, it's Johnny Cash Friday. We got to go. We got to get to some music. We'll be back in a moment.
Has no authority to force a retailer in Idaho, Nevada, Michigan, name your state, to pay Arkansas state sales tax. Just like the state of Idaho can't come in and make one of our vendors pay Idaho state sales tax. And so I think that should be handled on the federal level. It's interstate commerce. Clearly, it's a federal issue, and so that one should be handled. That should be handled on the federal level. On the gas tax, I had a couple concerns with that. As we continue to go forward as a society, we're going to continue to see a larger transition towards hybrid electric vehicles, alternative fuel vehicles. And the reason why we got to the problem we're into now is because we depend so heavily on gasoline taxes for the repair and maintenance of our roads. And obviously the repair and maintenance of our roads is a huge concern. We need to keep our infrastructure up to date, keep it safe, to make sure the flow of commerce and just, driving back and forth to work every day is safe. But by the same token, if we continue to make our reliance upon the gasoline tax, it's not going to be too many years down the road we're going to be in the same issue, because cars will continue, more and more people will continue to shift more away from the gasoline over to the hybrids. Hydrogen's coming online as an alternative method. We've seen natural gas, all electric vehicles. So as these newer technologies come into place, it's going to further erode that gas tax. And so I felt that Julie Mayberry presented the bill. It was the recommendation from a Blue Ribbon Commission that came out several years ago that said that we need to start looking at bringing in taxes from automotive parts and other sources to plug that gap, not to continue to rely on gasoline. Because I feel what's going to happen, it'll solve the problem short term, but eventually long term, I think we're going to be back in the same situation.
Yeah. Well, when I take all of those, we're talking with Stephen Meeks, and I can't argue with your reasoning there for voting no.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Hey guys, it's Sue Cosner, your favorite sexual health expert, with another version of Ask the Pro. This month, I got a letter from Sandy in Seattle about an explosive bedroom secret she and her husband recently discovered. She writes, Dear Sue, my husband and I used to have a great life in the bedroom, but in the last few years, he has struggled. He's tried about everything, but nothing has worked. Then one day he came home and gave me a night I will never forget. He told me about this secret formula, Noxatril, that changed our life in the bedroom once and for all. Wow, Sandy, you beat me to it. I recommend Noxatril to every guy that struggles in the bedroom. It's the only one. Noxatril is all natural and works to increase blood flow fast. It's like that little blue pill on steroids. Noxatril has a special free bottle offer, shipped discreetly to your door.
Find out how to get a free bottle of Noxatril while supplies last. Call 800-450-1381. That's 800-450-1381. Free bottle for limited time, so call now. 800-450-1381. 800-450-1381.
All right, welcome back to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. It's always great to have everybody with us on a Friday. Thanks for starting the beginning of your weekend with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. All right, so check this out for a second. We've got a new update here in the Arkansas corruption, Medicaid mafia, whatever you want to call it, scandal here. Let me introduce you to a woman by the name of Sherry Bazell. Sherry Bazell is 46 years old. She pled innocent to felony charges. She's the CEO of the New Beginnings Behavioral Health Service. Pretty profound individual in the behavioral health realm. Turns out she had contracts with Milton Russell Rusty Cranford, you know, the guy that had to have that, or tried to have that guy up in New Jersey murdered. Turns out she had contracts she wasn't disclosing with the state, and that's part of the charging her with this. Arkansas lobbyist Milton Rusty Cranford, and once again, we can see the preferred family health care. We're going to have to get further into this. I mean, she was pretty high up in the state. She was an appointee of Governor Asa Hutchinson to one of those, fancy state boards as well. You got to check this article out, Arkansas Democrat Gazette. But we'll also have more coverage of it next hour. Don't go anywhere.
The news and talk.
I would probably add my concern would also be is, the taxpayer continuing to be asked for more and more money in these situations, to build roads that we're already giving the government a lot of our money. And so I guess my fear is, and I've seen some state representatives say this, publicly, but when the 92nd General Assembly, you guys aren't passing any more laws now, and do you think, let me ask you this, do you think the people, when it's all said and done, are going to be paying more in taxes to the government, meaning a net tax increase after this session? Because the way I look at DFNA's numbers, that appears to be the case, Stephen.
I can't argue with you. I think that's the case. We did the one large tax cut, obviously, and but yeah, I think overall you're correct. One thing that I was encouraged by, one of the constitutional amendments that I proposed was to try to phase out the personal property tax over time. Obviously, it's not one of the three that was chosen, but I understand, talking to some committee members, it was number 2 and number 3 in popularity. So look for that to come back next session, provided I'm reelected.
Yeah.
Because you're right. I think yes, the amount of money that the average Arkansan is going to be paying because of the 92nd General Assembly will go up versus down. So.
And that's and see, in that from a fiscal standpoint, like I said, there was some good stuff that happened. Like you said, I think it's good that we had the income tax cut. But if you give some money back, eventually, but then we have these plans to raise in the future, and then you're going to be raising more than you take. Then then that's a net tax increase, and that's frustrating. And so, Stephen, I mean, that technically means that government got bigger this session, not smaller.
Right. Well, the one I guess shining light on that is government did grow. We all know government always grows, but as I understand it, the growth of government this year was below the growth of the economy. So the size of government versus the size of the economy actually shrunk slightly. We'll just say for whatever that's worth for our listeners. But yeah, I think you're right, we did. And on top of that, the other thing that's going to be facing Arkansans is because of the minimum wage increase, prices of goods that we buy are going to go up. So the cost of living in the state is going to go up. So Arkansans are going to get hit with a double whammy. They're going to get hit with slightly higher taxes, and they're going to get hit with a slightly higher cost of living because of the minimum wage increase.
It's just it's frustrating. Why do you think? I mean, why do you think we're in a position to where we're needing to do this? I get the Arkansas Department of Transportation. They don't think that they have enough money. Okay. I get you had the counties. You have 911 services. They say they don't have enough money. and there's all these other needs, but why don't we have the money? I mean, what's going on? Do we need to? I mean, because one of the things that I thought was frustrating in the session, just from an observing standpoint up there in the gallery, there really wasn't a conversation on cutting spending or looking at ways to save money so that we don't have to go to the people and ask for more of it.
Sure. Well, during the fall budget hearings and during the past summer, we did have some victories where we were able to cut back on the size of the appropriations. We cut close to $3 or $4 billion worth of appropriations out this last session, and we cut like 800 pages worth of regulations. Those didn't get a whole lot of news attention, but we did get those victories. And a lot of times what happens, unfortunately, with state government is we hear about the general funding or the general fund. The general fund only accounts for about 20% of all state revenue. So that's roughly $5 billion of our $25 billion budget. And the rest of the money comes in special revenue. So, for example, take the funding for the 911 system. Funding for the 911 system, under the way it used to be, you paid 65 cents. That money went directly into fund the 911 system. That's all it goes for, is fund 911 system. And what ended up happening is there's a shortfall there, because as we go to better technologies, obviously there's more cost involved with that. And, wages go up. There's, being a 911 operator.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, folks. Welcome to the program. Thanks so much for being with us. We always appreciate it. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. Good morning to Happy Friday to everybody out there. I already told the audience in the first hour we're down a man today, so I'm operating 3 computers, 4 computer screens, 3 computers simultaneously. So you'll have to forgive me if there's a little pause delay here and there. But hey, we're gonna get it going. It's no big deal, folks. I found out. I got this post from A1 Scott Richardson 14 hours ago. Exciting times as today we start this journey again. Although the path is similar, it will not be the same journey as before. Now, I think this is talking about a running for District 91. That's the seat that's currently held by Republican Dan Douglas. Why don't we just ask Scott? We've got Scott on the phone. Hey, Scott, how are you this morning?
I'm good, Paul. Good morning. How are you?
Yeah. So tell us about this. Tell us about this announcement that you made yesterday, sir.
Well, we decided to go ahead and move forward with the announcement based on a number of different factors. Obviously, on Wednesday, the general session came to an official end. So that's over. But there were a number of catapults within the session this year that created a lot of challenges for me personally. My last round, I ran against Representative Douglas on a number of different pieces, mostly taxation and the challenges associated with his need to continue to increase our taxes. He introduced an internet sales tax bill, which, by the way, he reintroduced this year, and we sort of expected that to come back around. And then he again went after more money for roads through raising our taxes on diesel and gasoline at the wholesale level. So we expected to see some of those things. But the real catapult for me this year was some of the social challenges that we saw from Representative Douglas, including challenges associated with what we call the abortion trigger bill. That bill was designed or is designed to give us an immediate impact if Roe versus Wade is ever overturned in our state. And the bill is a well-designed bill, and it provides Arkansans that protection against ongoing abortions in the state if in fact the Supreme Court were to reverse that Roe. So that bill came before the House. Representative Douglas was very unhappy about the bill. Even went to speak in front of the House, what we call the well, to tell us this is a terrible bill and they shouldn't vote for it. That, considering the ramifications of a bill like that, it spoke to me directly. I'm a pro-life individual. I feel that clearly life begins at conception and therefore needs to be protected, not only from a social perspective, but constitutionally, providing those constitutional protection of our rights. And one of the basics of that is life, obviously. So that spoke to me directly. And then we saw him introduce what's called the Physicians-Assisted Suicide Bill, which was a terrible bill, even among physicians-assisted suicide bills, giving no real opportunity to do an evaluation of the patient, giving the patient no time to really think about what's going on or to understand their rights as they move forward, or their ability to manage pain or any other pieces of this. It really was a terribly designed bill, and a step backward from a social perspective in regards to conservative values. Those two bills alone really pushed me out of this more of a, okay, well, we're going to see more of the same kind of thing from him, to a, we really have to get this thing moving and we have to make this change. We can no longer afford to continue to live with these kinds of challenges from District 91. So that's really what pushed me to move at this point and to go ahead and get things started. I came up a little bit short in
That's an understatement.
In the
a little bit short. I mean, come on, how many votes was it?
It was 12 votes. That's not a lot of people. If I could have reached, I think 7 more folks changed their mind that did vote, or found another dozen people to come out and vote, we could have made a significant change. So it was quite a blow. It spoke to me personally as a we didn't do quite enough. And given that we have more opportunity, more time this year, going ahead and declaring early gives us that much more time to get organized, to get our stuff moving forward, and to reach more people with the message that we have.
I think State Representative Dan Douglas is one of the most vulnerable. I think he was 2 years ago. He's one of the most vulnerable Republicans out there in terms of deviating from the Republican Party platform, and that was just 2 years ago on the tax increases. Just the amount of revenue he was trying to get from the people, and he was their point man. He was their lead guy. Now that he voted against the abortion trigger law, which again would have made abortion in Arkansas illegal with the exception of the life of the mother if Roe versus Wade is overturned. Basically, it would allow Arkansas law to be restored to what it was before Roe versus Wade. Now we're talking about, deviating from this social issue that's probably the biggest social issue in the Republican Party platform. Scott, don't you agree?
I do agree. Abortion is a very there's a lot of passionate people on both sides of the issue, and it's been a social challenge for us for quite some time. But the reality is, for those of us who have followed the issue for a number of years, we can clearly see that science no longer supports the pro-choice ideology of what life is. Science supports the concept that life does, in fact, start for that individual at conception, and therefore, because it starts at conception, from a Republican perspective, we say that all life is precious. All life should be protected. And if a human life does start at that conception from a platform perspective, we have to support the ideology of protecting that life from a constitutional perspective, all the way through from conception all the way through its own end at whatever point during its life that happens. So to deviate from that as a Republican, to step out and not only deviate from that from a basic perspective, but also to step out and passionately speak against the lives of those individuals and to completely Representative Douglas went to the well to speak against it. Part of his statement was that this decision was between the mother, the physician, and Almighty God, completely ignoring the right of the individual, the baby that's within the mother at that point in time. This child has rights, and it has the basic right of life, and we as Republicans feel that we have to protect that life, and to make a statement like that and to completely ignore the rights of the child at that stage in its life is it's very disappointing.
Yeah, and the elephant in the room here, because I was there when Dan Douglas said what you just quoted him as saying. And, you could tell that there was a difficult situation with somebody in his family, his niece or something that, had a tragedy, or I believe, with a baby. I don't know all of the insights, but and I'm sure it's very painful. I mean, it's not that there aren't bad things that continue to happen, but what you're saying, Scott, and I agree with you. You have to, I think, err on the side of the baby, and there's also these things, and you can look them up, but there's also these things called miracles, where you have the doctor that says that your baby is going to be this, is not going to be viable, and then you have some mothers who just say, you know what, no, I'm not choosing abortion. I think the baby, I'm going to pray, and then. You have situations where the baby comes out fine. I mean, it doesn't happen all the time. It probably doesn't happen most of the time, but it can happen. What do you think, Scott?
Yeah, I agree with you, Paul. This is, but that's the entire challenge that we have with this concept of abortion. We eliminate the possibilities at an abortion. You eliminate all of the possibilities that child ever potentially has. Is it likely that every child born is going to be the next Einstein or solve cancer or whatever it is that's out there that needs to be solved, the next big challenge? No. But is there the possibility that they might? Yes. Should they be allowed as a living human to be protected and allowed to live their life, whatever length of life that is?
Yes.
As they choose or as God chooses and directs that life. We are not in the position as people to pretend or to attempt to be God and make decisions from that level. We don't have enough information, and we can't possibly foresee the future and what the future brings for any individual. That's the same challenge that you have associated with individuals who are mentally challenged and the associated abortion push for those. And our move to eliminate that from a legal perspective, and that's a good move. We should protect those individuals. Just because they're going to be different or challenged in their life doesn't give us the right as a people to say you don't have the right to live. That genocide concept is amazing to me, that we're willing to accept that in the society that we live in. We consider ourselves to be more advanced and more forward-thinking, and yet we take these barbaric stances of killing the weakest among us, and it's frustrating that we can't see past that from a division, political division point, and see the real moral ramifications associated with that.
Yeah, and really just the hypocrisy. We are, like you said, we can't play God, and at this point, we're just drawing arbitrary lines in the sand. And the line that's not arbitrary is that life begins at conception. I mean, it's a scientific fact. The very term, conception, I mean, that the very word of that is self-explanatory, We're talking with Scott Richardson. Last night he announced his candidacy for the 91st District. Assuming that Dan Douglas runs again, you'll be challenging him in a Republican primary. Scott, I really appreciate you doing this and throwing your hat in the ring a second time. I know it's hard work to run a campaign. I know it's stressful. But let me ask you this. From a Republican standpoint, you look at somebody like Dan Douglas, and you look at the tax increases he pushed for two years ago. You look at the tax increases he pushed for and was more successful this time. And then you look at, what we were just talking about, the social issues with the assisted suicide, too. We forgot to throw that in there. Not only did he go out there and speak against the pro-life bill and vote against it, he also filed an assisted suicide a bill. That was odd. That came out of nowhere to me.
It's something that he had presented, at least from an idea in previous discussions and in a previous session. There was a discussion around that. The assisted suicide bills that have been passed across the nation by various state legislative bodies have given us some insight into what these bills create from a challenges perspective. And what we've learned in a lot of cases is that bills that, like the bill that Representative Douglas introduced, bills like that that do not require counseling, that do not require opportunities for the patient to have full understanding of what's going on around them, and do not have a psychological evaluation of the current state of mind of the individual, and most definitely doesn't require a waiting period for that individual to really have an opportunity to think about it. What we've discovered is that the number of assisted suicides in those cases is significantly higher than if we ask a patient to spend a little time thinking about it, to speak to someone about it, to actually have some counseling associated with it, and to have the real facts instead of just the fear associated with the end of life, have the real facts associated with what's going to be happening and how they're going to be able to manage their life and have some quality of life as they move forward. So the challenge here becomes we introduce an assisted suicide bill, which is, to me, is morally corrupt all by itself.
Yes.
But then you tack on top of that, we don't really work at all with the individual, the patient, to give them the opportunity to consider the overall ramifications of ending one's own life. And by doing so, we actually encourage additional people to take that step when they could have additional time with their family, could have additional time to make an impact on society. There's a number of different pieces there, but most importantly, they can enjoy the latter portions of that life and actually have an opportunity to get things really settled within their life. So I think that having an assisted suicide bill is morally corrupt by itself, but then to introduce a bill like Representative Douglas did that doesn't really take any steps to protect the patient or protect the patient's family, it's despicable at least. The moral issues associated with Representative Douglas's this last session and his push for what we often see is a more liberal, significantly more liberal side of things, really put us in a situation where I couldn't continue to sit on the sideline and watch things move forward. But really, this race is not just about what happened and what he did or has done in the past or the challenges. This is about choosing a new direction for District 91. We as a group here in District 91 are continuing to grow. We're changing. We are a very diverse environment, and we have a lot of things that are going on here. But we still have a very conservative ideology around how things should be handled from both a fiscal and a fiscal and a moral perspective. Social issues are very important to us. So we need to push past what Representative Douglas has done in the past, and we need to start looking at how we can make things work better for us in the future. And so I also, in my announcement, I put together a few tidbits from my vision of how we progress as a state, how we continue to move forward and advance our state. Listen, we're in a lot of low categories. We have to make some changes. Continuing to do things the same way that we've always done them has continued to put us at the back of the pack. So we've got to find a way to get out of that rut and move forward. And some of the challenges that we see in this state all revolve around financing. We are taxing our people into poverty. We can the taxation rates. You look at our sales tax rates. You look at the income tax. You look at the taxes across the board. And some of the biggest challenges that we see is the rate at which people are being taxed. Even it's interesting to me that even Representative Douglas, not that I want to jump back on his voting record, but he even voted against tax relief in the Budget and Finance Committee meetings. Now that alone tells you the challenges that we see from that perspective, and it's not matched by the general perspective of the people that are in District 91. So how do we move forward? So I encourage people that are listening to go out and take a look at I've got a Facebook page, my announcements listed there. It's also obviously going to be publicized elsewhere. If you want to find me on Facebook, facebook.com, vote Scott Richardson. There's some good things that we can do to help empower our people and to really start progressing from an economic perspective. But we've got to do something with the high number of people who are currently not looking for work in Arkansas. Our employment rate, employability rate is in the top 3, meaning the worst 3 of the nation right now. We have to find ways to encourage people to get back to work. And I think that along with a number of other factors, that's going to help us reduce overall taxation burden by distributing that among more people. So it gives us some opportunities. But we have to look past what's been done in the past, and we've really got to start focusing on the future and how do we get a path forward from this point to start moving Arkansas out of the backside of things and into the foreground and being a more prosperous community so that all of us citizens that are in our state can actually start moving forward. So I don't want to spend all of my time on your show focused on what Representative Douglas has done because that's the past for me, and we can't change that, but we can prevent any future issues by looking to the future, finding new ways that we can move forward and moving away from.
And I think that's great.
And
I just, I've thrown your release up on the screen here, and I love how specific, the issues that you have here. Legislate to reduce per capita spending, protect the people, protect Arkansas heritage, legislate monument protection. That was obviously an issue. Protect our people. Scott, you do have great ideas moving forward, sir, and I've always been impressed, and we got to do this again. We got to have you on the program more. We got to make a YouTube video out of this, so hopefully you can get it out to the folks at District 91 on social media, and they can get behind your campaign, because I think in terms of what the current status quo is, it's not working. So.
I agree, and I appreciate the opportunity to come on and speak with you and speak to your listeners. And look me up, give me a call. My phone number is listed on the announcement, along with email or whatever else that you use to contact. And I'd love to speak with people. Absolutely,
Scott Richardson, appreciate it, sir. Good luck.
Thank you.
All righty, folks. We talked for a long time, but it was really, really good, and it's always good to talk to folks who are engaged in the legislative process and are watching what their representatives are doing. And that should be a lesson to all state representatives that there are other people in your community who are watching what you're doing in their name, and they could file at any moment. At any moment. Back in a minute. All right, folks, this is Conduit News Radio. We're up against a hard break here in 1 minute. But good news, Congressman Bruce Westerman is coming your way next. He'll be on the program. We're talking about this. A lot of hubbub a couple weeks ago, a lot of hubbub about the Westerman health care plan. I don't know if you heard about it. It got very little attention here, but Fox News was talking about Bruce Westerman. So we'll talk with him when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
We go to better technologies. Obviously, there's more cost involved with that, and wages go up. There's being a 911 operator is obviously a high stress job, and so trying to make sure that wage is competitive. And so lo and behold, over time, obviously you get a shortfall because that fee has not increased over time. And what's happened is obviously we're all switching to cell phones, and so counties were having to pick up the difference. And what we decided to do with the 911 fee, part of the reason why we raised it is, and I think that's the only tax increase I voted for, is because I see public safety and security as a prime function of government. And the money was either going to come from taxpayers at the county level or it was going to come from taxpayers at the state level. And when it comes at the state level, because of the way we reorganized it, we created a 911 board, put it under the Department of Emergency Management, creating accountability across the state, creating best practices. As it stands right now, 911 systems are essentially standalone. They kind of do their own thing, and they don't always talk to each other in the most efficient manners. And so by bringing it to the state level, creating a 911 board, the hope is over time we've got 127 911 systems in the state. We're going to reduce that number down quite a bit, create more efficiencies. So over time, try to save money while at the same time increase services. But like anything else, it takes money to do that. So the question is, are we going to tax at the county level or are we going to tax at the state level to make sure this vital infrastructure is there? And so that one I did support, and I think that was the right move. When you go to things like roads, same situation. It's a special fund. There's no general revenue that comes out of that, and so it's strictly gas tax that goes into pay for our roads. And your listeners may or may not know, but Arkansas has the 12th highest number of highway miles in the country. We actually have more highway miles, believe it or not, than California. That was done back years ago when they converted a lot of county roads into state highways. Some practical benefits to that, by making those highway miles state highway miles, you can get economies of scale when it comes to trying to maintain it. So again, you're either paying at the county level or at the state level, and it was thought back then it was more efficient you've got better results by doing it at the state level. So but with cars becoming more efficient, with more hybrids coming on, again, you run into a situation. The amount of money is essentially staying steady that's coming into the state, while the price of paving a mile of highway is going up. Oh. And so, you run into a situation at some point of, you're not going to be able to get the work done you need to get done because you simply don't have the money because of these economic drivers. And so with a lot of these things, what happens is because everything is not in one big pile of money, you have to, all this stuff gets kind of piecemeal.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program on this Johnny Cash Friday. We have Congressman Bruce Westerman is back with us. Bruce, how are you, sir?
Doing well, Paul. Always good to be with you on Johnny Cash Friday. Now, especially since now that Johnny's going to get his statue in the U.S. Capitol.
That's exactly right. Yeah, that was a debate that I was following, pretty close. It was one of those things, and I was really excited when they went ahead with Johnny. I mean, I know there's strong arguments to be made, obviously, for Sam Walton. I know some people wanted Sam, but I think they made the right decisions.
Yeah, so Daisy Bates and Johnny Cash will be getting a statue in the Capitol. I do night tours up there when constituents are in town, and I can take people into the Capitol after hours when there's not the big crowds. And one of the things we do are look at the statues and talk about some of the great people in our nation's history. So I'll be excited when Johnny Cash and Daisy Bates statue land there in the Capitol.
Yeah.
Not sure how long that'll be, but I know the legislature passed it and Governor Hutchinson signed it into law, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, you're exactly right. I thought it was really, really well done, and we've been doing Johnny Cash Fridays on the program for a long time now, just because he really is an Arkansas tradition or legend or whatever, and not to mention his music is just really, really good, and just got such a broad catalog. Congressman Bruce Westerman,
and he's from the fourth district.
Ah,
he was born in the 4th district.
Yeah.
Just down the road from where Paul Bear Bryant was born. My friends in Alabama told me that if Arkansas would vote to put Bear Bryant in the Capitol, they would probably raise the funds to do it.
I bet they would.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. So Bruce, I was watching Fox News, I don't know, 3-4 weeks ago, something like that, and they mentioned your name in a good way. They talked about your health care plan. I didn't know Bruce Westerman had a health care plan. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, you know what happened to our health care bill, that the AHCA, the American Health Care Act, when we barely got it out of the House, and then it was the early morning, late night vote. Senator McCain gave it the thumbs down and killed it, and that took a lot of wind out of the sails of President Trump's plan to fix health care and the hard work we did in the House. But the health care issue didn't go away. But we moved over to tax reform, and it's almost like people forgot about health care, except for the American citizen who was still feeling the brutality of the Affordable Care Act. So I began working on a health care plan immediately after that. I'm not on the Energy and Commerce Committee or the Ways and Means Committee that has jurisdiction over health care, but I am a duly elected member of Congress, and I felt it was my responsibility to tackle this issue. I have a really great staff member who has a real interest in health care policy. When I was in the state legislature, I did a lot of work in health care policy, and then I've got some friends who are experts in health care policy, and we just spent a lot of time gathering good ideas and compiling them into one document. I had intended to get this out before the election last fall, and I didn't do it. I wish we had been able to pull it together. We just couldn't get all the work done in that amount of time. And then the Democrats were really dishonest in the last election. They took a bill that never passed and talked about how Republicans were in conditions of trying to destroy health care, when the people who destroyed health care in this country were the Democrats with the Affordable Care Act, which is anything but affordable and anything but about care. But moving past that, we filed this bill early in March, kind of under the radar, but wanted to get it out there and get the text in the system. And lo and behold, a couple of weeks later, President Trump comes out and starts talking about health care again. So the national media started bashing him, saying, he's trying to work on health care. Republicans failed at it, and they have no plan. Until they started looking, and they saw this bill that I had just filed that was actually I think it's a great health care plan. And so I started getting lots of requests from national media, doing interviews and talking about the bill. And I've been to the White House and visited with them about it, spoken to several groups, and we're continuing to improve the bill. But, we went into it, and with me being an engineer, I said, and having served on the budget committee that deals a lot with Congressional Budget Office, I realized that any kind of health care bill that got scored where it covered fewer people or cost more money was going to be dead on arrival. So I said, we've got to work backwards from this. We've got to come up with health care policy that covers more people and costs less money. And when you look at how messed up our federal health care policy is right now, that's really a lot easier to do than you would think. And we worked from the premise that we were going to make sure that pre-existing conditions were covered, that we were going to lower costs both for the taxpayer who's footing the bill for federal health care programs, as well as paying for their own health insurance through their private insurance plans. And we had to provide more choice and options in the process. And that's exactly what we've named it the Fair Care Act does. It's H.R. 1332. And since it's gotten all this attention, we're getting a lot of other people coming in with additional good ideas. The bill's got basically 5 sections to it. It deals with private insurance. It deals with public payers, Medicare and Medicaid. It deals with prescription drugs. It deals with provider competition, and it deals with innovation in healthcare. So those are the 5 main titles of the bill, and any of those titles could be pulled out and made into a standalone bill, as well as many of the sections in there actually were standalone bills. Some of them that we passed in the House last Congress with huge bipartisan support. The Affordable Care Act allowed insurance companies to create monopolies. And we had a bill in the House last Congress that broke up those insurance monopolies. It put the McCarran-Ferguson antitrust laws back in place for insurance companies. And it passed with, I think it was 416 votes. So if you can get 416 votes on anything in the House, that's huge bipartisanship. We had another bill that passed out of the House with huge bipartisan support that would create these associated health care plans where small companies in different states can join together to form a larger purchasing organization and do that across state lines. It's something the administration actually liked the idea. It never went anywhere in the Senate because Senate Democrats would block it with a filibuster vote, but the administration's trying to put that in place. The prescription drug part of it, Senator Leahy, a Democratic senator, had come up with a bill called the CREATES Act that got some bipartisan support. We took that and improved it and put that in as our prescription drug plan. And it mainly focuses on how do you get generics into the market quicker, and how do you keep pharmaceutical companies from taking a new drug that has a 7-year patent on it, and when they get close to the end of the patent, they'll slightly tweak the formula so that they can get another patent and sell that as a brand name drug. We're seeing a huge increase in the cost of prescription drugs. And then you've got these the more complicated drugs, and we've got to get some biosimilar pharmaceuticals out there, which are like generics for your conventional drugs. So there's a lot to talk about in the bill, but overall it'll lower costs, cover more people, and give people more choice and options, and put more transparency into the system, and give people an opportunity to know what they're paying for, and create competition, remove loopholes that are allowing pharmaceutical companies and insurance companies, and even in some of the larger areas when we talk about provider competition. Another thing that the Affordable Care Act did was allowed hospitals to form huge monopolies. So we break up the hospital monopolies. We allow doctors to own hospitals again, and get a lot of the the free market capitalist ideas back into healthcare providers and competition and insurance that was removed in, the pre-socialist plan of the Affordable Care Act, which now they're wanting to do Medicare for all, which is the peak of socialist medicine, I guess.
Yeah. Let me talk to you about that for a second. In light of the balance of power in the House. Now, first of all, I think what you're talking about is great. I think this is really great, Congressman Westerman, that you are putting forth this effort, and you've gotten some attention. Like you said, you've met with the White House about this. And, the president is now saying, listen, Republicans will be the party. The Republican Party will be the party of great health care. And I think that, I personally think President Trump's doing a great job. But I also love how he communicates to the American people, and he makes those statements like that. He makes bold statements, and, you can really tell he's aiming well past mediocrity. I mean, he's aiming for greatness.
Right.
But when you have the left out there saying we want Medicare for all, and you look at how the House was lost to the Democrats in the last election cycle, those districts that they won were moderate districts. They weren't these Alexandria, the districts that the Republicans lost were not far left districts. And so I'm just wondering, what are the odds that the Republicans take the House back in 2020?
Well, the more the Democrats keep talking, the better our odds are. If you look at we need to win 18 seats to win the House back, and if you take the 18 closest races from the last election, the margin of you add up the total number of votes those 18 seats were lost behind, it was less than 80,000 votes across the country. So, and then you go up to 30 or 40 seats, and you're still looking at a lot of like 51, 49, 52, 48 votes, and a lot of those are traditional Republican seats that probably should have never been lost. That I think we've got a real good chance of gaining those back. Of course, we lost 3 seats in Pennsylvania because of the work Obama and Eric Holder were doing behind the scenes to try to influence how congressional districts and state legislative districts were drawn. Pennsylvania had a Republican-controlled legislature, but they got the balance in favor of the liberals on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. So there was a lawsuit out there that went to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the districts had to be redrawn, and so the Supreme Court redrew the districts, and we literally lost 3 seats in Pennsylvania because their Supreme Court gerrymandered the district.
Gosh.
And they're trying to do that across the country. This issue that this lawyer from Little Rock getting on the ballot, they're trying to create I love the way they spin words, a nonpartisan commission to draw congressional districts and state legislative districts. Even though the Democrats have done it, the Republicans have never drawn a congressional district, at least not since Reconstruction in Arkansas, or a state house district. But now that system that worked for so long is no longer good, since Republicans will get to redraw those districts after the 2020 census.
Yeah, we got to stop that effort. 100%. I'm glad that you're following that, because you can obviously do a lot to raise awareness of what a terrible idea it is. I also think, we're talking with Congressman Bruce Westerman, folks. I also think that part of the reason, and I'll be able to get your comments on the Mueller report, but part of the reason I think the Democrats took the House in some of those moderate districts is there were people that were believing the Russia collusion narrative. They were listening to the media, and now we know the media was, in some cases, actively deceiving their listeners. What was your response to the Mueller report?
Well, my response is that, and even when it was going on and everybody was getting frustrated with how long it was going, I kept thinking, from what I've seen in classified briefings, that the information has been released now, that what this report's going to show, if it's done fairly, is that the real wrongdoings were on the side of the Democratic Party and Hillary Clinton. And I hope there's some prosecutions out there. And I tell you, the guy that needs to pay is James Comey. And I get you can probably hear a little bit of frustration in my voice.
Yes.
But when I was first elected and I went to D.C. and there was an orientation, they had different people coming in and talking to us, and Comey came in and spoke to the new freshmen, and I heard all this talk about what a straight shooter he was and what a patriotic guy he was, and it was almost like people were saying too many good things about the guy. But not long after I was in Congress, we had to vote to reauthorize the FISA warrants, and you get into the issue of privacy and the Fourth Amendment, whether these FISA warrants are constitutional or not, and the information surrounding the justification of these FISA warrants, it's usually classified information. So you go into what they call the SCIF. You're looking at classified information, and you see how, since we've had these FISA warrants, they have actually helped prevent terrorist attacks here. And I have colleagues who are in the legal system before they got elected to Congress who had actually used the FISA warrants, who I could talk to and understand how they work. But there were great safeguards in the legislation to protect the privacy of Americans. You basically had to be communicating with a terrorist overseas before a FISA warrant could be issued the way the law was written to get into your records. But that's all built on trust, and the highest level of that trust are the people running the FBI and the CIA. So to have Comey misuse that FISA warrant system is it's damaging on multiple levels. So as a voting member of Congress now, I have to look at this system and say, yeah, if it was executed the way that it was designed, the privacy of Americans are protected. But if you've got a bad actor at the head of the FBI who has been shown has misused this FISA warrant process, then you have to start looking at, do we do away with this process and then put Americans at risk because we don't have this program out there to stop terrorists anymore? So he's done a great deal of damage to the trust of Congress and the trust of America in the systems that we have there to protect us from people around the world that want to do harm.
Wow. And we're, I saw on the Ingram angle 2 nights ago where Governor Mike Huckabee was guest hosting for Laura Ingram, and he's interviewing a guy named Joe DeGeneva, who is one of the first FISA court attorneys, when the law, I think, first came into existence. And he said, Bruce, he said that the FISA court has already told the Justice Department they were lied to. He said that John Brennan and James Comey need to be very concerned. They need to lawyer up. And he said that they also revealed that the FBI hired 4 independent contractors to spy on Americans 4 years before the 2016 election. Now, I can only assume, Bruce, that those Americans were potential presidential candidates. Now, that's an assumption, but, I mean, why else would you do it? I just think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we're going to be astonished and amazed at just how corrupt things were when it all comes out.
Yeah, but I would say there should be no pity for anybody who abused that FISA court system, especially doing it for political gain. And it's a lot more serious than the national media will portray it. Our whole justice system is based on truth and on trust. And when you have people at the highest levels violating that, there needs to be an example made of them. Because the system crumbles if you don't maintain that integrity. And what they did, especially with those FISA warrants, just gutted the integrity of that system.
Congressman Bruce Westerman, it's always great to have you on, sir. I appreciate you spending time with us, and I appreciate your work on health care. I'm excited to see what comes of that.
Well, good to be with you, Paul.
All righty. Happy Friday, and have a great weekend.
You too.
All righty.
Thank you.
Folks, it's always great to have him on, and it's Johnny Cash Friday, and we will be back here in just a moment.
We've run into these situations. The tax cut we did, that was a reduction to general revenue and reduced that pot because there was a surplus there, and so we could do it and without any problem. So that's why we don't take that surplus, and because sometimes I get that question. Well, if you got $100 million surplus, why not just send it to roads instead of raising taxes? Well, that's why, because they're coming from different accounts, if you will.
I understand. Yeah, it was interesting when you have the standalone income tax cut, over the next 2 years, $95 million or so, and then you have, the next week we have the gas tax increase, which was going to bring in $95 million. And so,
right.
It seems to offset. We're talking with Stephen Meeks, and again, you voted against the gas tax, internet sales tax, and the half-cent sales tax extension. State Representative Stephen Meeks, I want to ask you one more question. Do you think that the people of Arkansas, you think they're more engaged, paying more attention to what's going on in Little Rock? For example, your microchip bill, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
That was a success that you had. Tell us about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. For those that don't know the background, about a year or so ago, I was reading how some folks over in Sweden were getting microchipped, and I thought that was something we need to keep an eye on because that technology is coming to the state. A few months later, I read about a company up in Wisconsin that had started microchipping their employees, and so I went to our folks and said, "Hey, do we have any protections in place for people who do not want this?"
Complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a fantastic week of broadcasting, and I really appreciate you guys being with us. We're going to be back here on Monday, and I'm going to go over more about
this news story about this Medicaid provider who's been charged, pled not guilty here in Arkansas, having to do with more Russell Cranford, whatever, anyway, Rusty Cranford back in the news. He was the lobbyist that really was the linchpin to all of this. So we will see you on Monday, 6 a.m. with bells on. Go to conduitnews.com for this broadcast and more like it. Subscribe on YouTube. Click the little bell to receive notifications so you get these smaller videos like the one we just did with Congressman Bruce Westerman. Be safe, Arkansas. Have a great weekend.